Welcome everybody to the April 2023 meeting for GDG Dallas. Lily is an Android engineer at Comcast NBCUniversal based in Philadelphia, where she works on a client team for the Xfinity app. She has a bachelor's degree in computer science from Middlebury College and recently completed a tech rotational program at Comcast NBCUniversal, where she rotated through 3 different tech roles in the business over 2 years. Outside of coding, Lily enjoys hiking, playing tennis, and cooking. Most importantly, Lily loves to learn and wants to share what she is learning with all of you. So I'll turn it over now to our illustrious speaker, and I just got to reconfigure the in-room projector and some stuff like that. But take it away, Lily.
All right, great. Thank you, Luke. Let me share my window. All right, can I get a confirmation that you can see my screen now?
Absolutely. Looks great.
All right, so tonight I'm going to be talking about getting started with Proxyman, which is a web debugging proxy tool. If you're not familiar with web debugging proxy tools, they basically allow you to capture, inspect, and manipulate HTTPS traffic. So you might be familiar with other web debugging proxy tools, or you might be completely new to web debugging. Either way, this will be a good overview on how to get set up and use some of the basic tools. So the agenda for tonight, first we're going to go over how to get set up with Proxyman. We'll start getting set up on your Mac OS. Proxyman is a native Mac OS app, although they have launched Proxyman for Windows, and they're also constantly coming out with new updates and release notes, so that's pretty exciting. Their website does have a lot of documentation for the newer stuff. And then we'll be getting set up on an Android physical device and an Android emulator. I'm an Android engineer, so that is what I'm familiar with, but it'd be a similar process for iOS as well. Next, we'll go over some of the basic debugging tools: map local, breakpoints, scripting, edit and repeat, and network conditions. And then lastly, we'll go over sharing, different importing and exporting settings so that we can collaborate with our teammates and save our work for later. So starting off with getting set up. On your Mac OS, if you go to proxyman.io, you'll be prompted to download Proxyman for Mac OS. This is also where you'll be able to see documentation and different release notes. Once the app downloads, you'll want to launch the Proxyman app and then navigate to the certificate menu, installer certificate on this Mac, and that will open up the Mac setup guide. You'll be prompted to install and trust here. Once you click that, you'll see the green check mark and it'll say installed and trusted to confirm that you're all set up. So that's pretty easy. Next, to set up Proxyman for an Android physical device, we're again going to go to the certificate menu, this time down to install certificate on Android. If you wanted to do it on an iOS phone, you would go to the one right above it and select physical devices. This will pop open an Android setup guide. If we hadn't done that first step to get set up on our Mac, we would be prompted to do so here in step 1. But you can see you have a green check mark, so we are good to go there. Next, you want to configure your Wi-Fi proxy on your device to Proxyman. So you'll want to open the Settings app, go to your Wi-Fi, select your current Wi-Fi, and configure the proxy. So this is what this looks like on a Google Pixel 6. Once you're on your current Wi-Fi network, you'd click the pencil icon to edit, open up advanced options, and select manual under proxy. And then you'll need to put in the proxy host name, which is your current IP network on your computer, and then the proxy port of the current port of Proxyman, which 9090 is the default. And just going to pop back to the setup guide for a second to show that in step 2, you can see these values here. And if you click this box, it would copy the server value for you. Once you do that, step 3 is to open the Google web browser on your Android device, proxy.man/SSL. This is to get the certificate. You will see this dialog, install CA certificates in settings. So if you go to install a certificate in your settings and click on CA certificate and select the Proxyman certificate that was trying to download, you'll just need to click install anyway here. And you can confirm this by going to your trusted credentials in settings, and under the user tab, you should see it, Proxyman right here. And I'll pop back to the setup guide for a second again. Step 5 is to add the Proxyman config in your Android app. So this is a network security config, and you can copy and paste the piece of code that they include here. You just need to change your production domain with your domain that you'd be using, and then add that to the Android manifest, and just make sure that you remove these configs from your production build. So I'm just seeing that here. You can see in line 18, I just replaced your domain here with com.example.api example, which is the project that I'll be using to demo the tools today. And then you just add your network security config under this application in Android manifest. Now setting up Proxyman for an Android emulator using the automatic script. I personally really like to use the emulator for Proxyman because oftentimes in the office, for example, we're not able to proxy the office Wi-Fi network. So Proxyman, it's great that you can run it on an emulator using that Wi-Fi network, whereas other proxy tools that I've used, I was not able to do that. So same thing as before, we'll go to certificate and install certificate on Android, and this time we're going to click emulators. A similar setup guide will pop open. Step 1 is the same. Now for step 2, you can see it says Android emulator devices found, 0 devices. Please launch one Android emulator from Android Studio. And so if you go to your device configuration in Android Studio, you just need to select one that does not have the Play Store icon here. So any of these devices without the Play Store icon will work, and you just need to make sure that's running. Once that's running, this will say one device, and you'll be able to click Override Emulator. And I'll demo this in a second before we get started with the tools. It'll open up a terminal and run an automated script. The first time you run this, you might need to install ADB if you don't already have that installed, and that might take up to 10 minutes. But once you do that once, every other time after that you run this script, it only takes a few seconds. And once you do that, you'll be able to see the logs start to pop up in Proxyman as long as you've already done step 3. So this is the network security config and the Android manifest file. You only need to do it once per project. You don't need to do it for a physical device and an emulator. It covers both. And last thing to note for the emulator is down here where it says quit Proxyman, revert override. So when you're done using your emulator or done using Proxyman, you'll want to click revert override, and this will make your emulator back to normal as if it didn't have the proxy on it. If you forget to do this, you might notice that your emulator is not connecting to the internet, and that happens to me often. You just have to open Proxyman back up and click revert override. This runs another automatic script, and you'll be good to go. And they do have links to troubleshooting down here, which is great if you do happen to have any issues, but it's been pretty smooth for me. All right, so I'm going to switch back, and hopefully you can still see my screen now with Proxyman up. Let me show you how this would work. So if we go to certificate, install certificate on Android emulators. So we can see I have one device running, which is right here, and I'm going to click Override Emulator. This opens up the terminal and starts running a script.
Hey, Lily, we can't see that. I don't know how you did the screen share, but it's only showing the debugging tools presentation. So if you want to.
Also, are we supposed to ask questions after the presentation or during the presentation?
We can take some questions now as I take the screen.
So I know that with Burp, when I try to use it against Android devices, ever since like Android made some changes, you have to go, do an extra step to get the certificate trusted. If you're using Proxyman on a physical device, do you have to do additional steps to get it to work for kind of doing those tests, or does it, yeah?
Yes. So going back to here, so this installing their certificate here and going into your settings and making sure it's trusted. This is only on the physical device. You don't need to do that on the emulator.
Okay. Because I was thinking about the Burp when I was doing some testing with a different tool. The Android would route traffic through. So if I was doing like web traffic, it would route it through. But when I actually try to use the application, it would not route that traffic that way. Route it through the proxy. It was actually routing it not through the proxy. So I'm guessing when you set up the trusted cert using Proxyman's trusted cert user is able to route both the web traffic and the application traffic through the proxy.
Yes, that's right. So when you include this network security config, this allows the proxy on this project. Otherwise, you would get just the device.
Okay, that makes sense. Gotcha.
Cool. And I just want
I had
to.
a question on that.
Yeah.
On what you were just showing there. Why does it have to be something that doesn't use Google Play services but has to have the Google APIs?
That is a great question. I'm not sure, and I have a feeling that this is something that would be included in the future with the release of Proxyman, but I don't actually know the answer to that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just curious. It's nice that it at least calls that out on that screen because it seems like that'd be a common problem.
No, I agree.
And I think, Luke, even with Charles, it is a headache, So like I always, if I do an emulator, I always try to do it one with Google Play services, because some things, it just maybe doing internally something.
Okay, and just want to confirm that you're unable to see my screen with the Proxyman. Do you still see the
we see a terminal window, like an Android emulator setup guide behind that. So we see several windows and an emulator over on the right side.
Awesome. So I will just do that again. So I'm going to go to certificate, install certificate on Android, select emulators, and you can see I have one device running. And I'm going to click override emulator. It opens up the terminal and starts running this ADB command. And then it restarts the device, and we'll see, we'll close out of this. I'm going to open up my API example app, and we'll start to see some logs over here. So this is just the GitHub link to the sample app that I created just to demo this project. It's a simple weather app. There's an API that returns a city, a weather icon, the current temperature, a low and a high. And it's all static data, very simple. We have San Diego, New York, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Seattle. Every time we click get weather, it's going to randomly pick an ID and show us a different city. And I can just show this a couple times here. We'll see the calls. So if we click on this first call here, weather/3, you can see in the response on the bottom right here, this is returning New York, high 56, low 34, current 52, and the icon storms. I guess I should show the one that's actually showing. So this one is ID 5, San Diego, high of 76, low 54, current 72, icon sun. And we can see that reflected in the app. So bottom left here is the request. You can look at the header, the body, raw, summary, which I'll go into more detail later, and similar different views here in the response. On the left-hand side, you can see different, if you had multiple devices, different domains. We're just going to be focused on the Proxyman Weather API, so I'm just going to select this one to narrow it down. And now I'm going to hide that sidebar. So the first tool that we're going to go over is Map Local, and the Map Local tool uses the content of local files as a response to your requests, which are matched with your rules. And I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to click on this API call, right-click on it, go to Tools, Map Local. This will open up a Map Local editor. So this is the response that we're going to modify. We'll give it a name. We'll call this one, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The URL, we're going to use the wildcard. So instead of 5 here, I'm going to put this star, which means that instead of just giving us this response, when we see the URL with a 5, it'll return this response for any request for any value in the star position. So any of those IDs. And I usually just delete this portion. And we're going to modify this so that the city is Philadelphia and the icon is sun. So we'll save this. And now, when I click Get Weather, we'll see that it's Philadelphia and a sun every time. And you can see here, the ID is different for each of these calls, but no matter what, we are returning Philadelphia with a sun. You can see in this edited column that there's a check mark showing that it has been edited as opposed to the ones before it. In the request box, if we go to summary, we can open up debugging tool, and you can see the tool name, the rule name, what the matching tool was, or URL, and then you can actually open the rule from here, and it'll pop open the rule that you used. So now I'm going to unselect this and call it again to show that it is now back to normal and no longer being edited. Okay. These are just some screenshots in case the live demo didn't work. Next, we're going to cover Breakpoint. So the Breakpoint tool allows developers to edit the contents of the request and/or the response on the fly. So this is pretty similar to Map Local, except instead of every time you receive a request, sending the same response, now when you receive a request that matches the rule you input, you'll be able to, in that moment, create a new response. So one time you get it, you might get one response, and then the next time it hits that breakpoint, you might respond with another. So let's show this one. Again, we're going to right-click on this API call, go to Tools, this time Breakpoint. And let's just call this our weather breakpoint. We're going to give the same matching rule, so just replace this ID with the wildcard star. And we're going to just do the breakpoint on the response. So we are going to unselect the request, but you could do that as well if you wanted to change any of the headers or values in the request. Done. Let me just unselect this one. So now when we click Get Weather, you will see a breakpoint window pop up, and you can look at the contents of the request and the response. This is what it would respond, and you can modify anything here. Let's make this rain, and we'll execute. We'll see that this one didn't actually take because it timed out. So that is something to take note of when you're using Breakpoint, that you have to be kind of quick with it because it can time out while it's waiting for you to respond. So this time we'll do it and be a little quicker. And I'll make this rain and execute. And we'll see that we see the new icon with rain here. And if I again go to the debugging tool and click open rule, I'm going to unselect response and now select request. So now we're just going to do the breakpoint on the request. If we click get weather, the request is for weather /2, but we're going to change it to 5. And we can see that that call was for 5 rather than 2. And now I'm just going to unselect this so this does not affect the rest of our calls. So now they're no longer being edited. And if we want to slow down on any of the rules, just let me know. But we'll keep going to scripting, the next tool. So the scripting feature allows the developer to write JavaScript code to manipulate the request or response in a flexible way. And the Proxyman scripting tool is designed to replace the rewrite GUI tool from Charles Proxy, if you are familiar with that. So going back again, once more right-clicking on this API call, and we'll go to Tools, this time Scripting. We'll see the scripting editor pop up. As before, we'll give it a name. This one we'll call Storms Across the Country. The URL, we'll do our same wildcard for the ID. And we'll just do this on the response. So here you'll see a lot of JavaScript code. A lot of it is commented out, and there are 2 functions. One is on request, and the other is on response. So we're going to scroll down to on response because that is all that we're running the script on. And you can see there's a lot of different templates that they have here. So you could log to the console, you could update or add new headers, update the status code, update the body, or map a local file as a body. You could do a combination of these things. So it's pretty flexible, which is cool. For our demo, we'll just stick to what we've been doing and update the body. So I'm going to uncomment this portion. So we're setting the body equal to the response, the body of the response. And then we could add a new key here to the body, but we're going to modify an existing key as we've done before with the icon. And we're going to set that to storm. Now we're going to set the body of the response to our body variable that we just created. And then we'll return that response. So I'll save and activate that. And now when I click get weather, oops, I had a typo. My app is not that smart. So let me just go to tools and where's scripting? Sorry about this. I'm just going to double click to edit this and I'm going to make it storms. Now I'm going to save that. Now we'll see the storms for all of our responses. And you can see that they were edited as before. We can see the rule. So you can add logic into this scripting tool, which is cool, make it more flexible. This is a very simple example, but I think you can get creative there. So I'm going to unselect this and turn that off. Okay, next tool is edit and repeat. So the edit and repeat tool allows developers to test an endpoint directly on Proxyman app without making a new request from their browser or client app. So this does not actually affect the app at all, which you'll see here. So maybe you have an API that's not integrated into the app yet that you want to test out how it will respond, or you just want to see different variations of an API. So we will, instead of going to tools, this time we're going to just go to edit and repeat. And this compose window will come up. So up here in the toolbar, you'll see this compose icon. If you click that, you'll also get to the compose window. It would just be blank. So you can also start from scratch if you wanted. But let's use this template. So if we just click send as is, we'll see the response of this call with the headers and the ID 4. Maybe we want to add a new header and just see how that would respond. It won't affect anything in this scenario. We could just check out what all the different IDs are. Or maybe we want to see how high the IDs go. We'll see with 6. There's no city weather for 6. So it's just another useful tool for different scenarios. And just to note that none of that was affecting the app here. It is still on the same call from before. All right, the last tool that we'll cover before moving on to sharing is network conditions, also known as network throttling, which allows developers to simulate adverse networking environments for certain domains or system-wide. So let me just run a couple of requests without anything edited so that we can see what the duration, request time, and response time are here. And now I'm going to right-click on this API call. Again, go to Tools, Network Conditions, and we'll just give it a name, Slow Network. And so you can do it for just a selected host, so our Proxyman API. Here, you could also apply it system-wide, which would affect all of the traffic on the device, but we'll just do it for this API or this host. Then there are preset profiles that you can choose from. So you can see there's 100% loss, very bad network, all the way up to 4G, and different variations here. Let's go with slow network, and you can see how the download and upload speeds change as you select different presets. I'm going to click done. And now when I click get weather and make this call, we have a very simple app with a simple API, so it's not as obvious as it might be with a more complex app, but you can still see that the duration here is significantly greater than the calls before that. And you can see edited has a little turtle icon just to show that the network conditions were modified. And I'm just going to turn this off. All right, and now we're going to move on to sharing. If anybody has any questions on the tools before we move on, feel free to ask them now. All right. So the first sharing tool that we'll go over is export settings. So export settings allows developers to export the tool settings to then share with your colleagues or even to save for yourself later. So if we go to our tools, map local, we have our It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia tool. Maybe we want to share this for a colleague to use or for ourselves. So I have recently gotten the paid version of Proxyman. The free tier, there is a free tier, but there are some limitations. One of which is that you can only have 2 rules at a time. So if you use multiple rules, you might want to save your map locals into a folder on your computer so that you could refer back to them if you're only on the free tier. But we'll right click on this rule and we'll go to export settings. And let's just name this map local export, and we'll save this into a folder on our desktop. Okay. And now for import settings. So import settings allows the developer to import the tools settings from other colleagues or from your own desktop who are using Proxyman or Charles Proxy. So it's nice that there is a lot of compatibility here. So if you go to Tools and then Import Settings, you can see the different settings that you can import from Proxyman. And then on the right here, the different tools that you could import from Charles Proxy. Personally, at work, I have a lot of colleagues who are still using Charles Proxy, but it doesn't stop us from collaborating together because I can still receive their different logs and tools. And I can show this now. If we go to Tools, Import Settings from Proxyman, Map Local, I can select this Map Local export config that we just exported. If I open that up, you'll see I now have two Map Local rules called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the one we already had, and then the one we just imported. All right, now exporting, more talking about exporting logs rather than exporting tools. So exporting allows a developer to investigate logs later or send to their QA team. And there are different variations or ways that you could export. So you could, I'll show this here. If we open up this sidebar again, you could select the entire device. You could select just the domain, the host. You could select just a subfolder. So maybe we only want to select one of these IDs. You could also select, if you search here, I do like that you can search. The search tool is pretty nice because you can specify anywhere in the call or the response. You could do just the URL. You could highlight, I'll highlight all of these ones that include Dallas is red. And you can then search by color or by comment. And you can add multiple search queries and do or and. So that's pretty nice. So maybe we want to select certain logs and just export these. So we'll show one of these first. Let's just export from this API. You could do it as a Proxyman log. This will include all of your showing if it was edited and what tool was used. It would include the highlighting colors and the comments. If you're, that's what I usually do unless I'm sharing with a Charles Proxy user. In that case, I would use HAR because that file is compatible. I'll show both examples here. Oops. So we'll save this as our Proxyman export. And then we will also save one as HAR to show the difference. And then lastly, before we import all of these, you can save the entire session. And I'll show you what that looks like when we import that. All right. Now to import, Proxyman supports multiple traffic log files from Proxyman and Charles Proxy. So again, great compatibility. You would just go to File, Open. You could also drag the files into the Proxyman window, and they would pop up there as well. So let's do File, Open. First, we'll do the Proxyman log. So do that again. All right, that's not working right now. Let me try one of the other ones. So we'll do the HAR export. All right, we'll show the session first, and then go back to those other ones. If you open up a session, you'll see that it'll open up in a new tab. You can create multiple tabs on the paid version. You can't do this on the free version if you want to have different sessions. And you can see in this session that if I just expand this, we can see all of our highlights, what was edited, if we had any comments. And we can go to the debugging tools. Let's see here, we can open up this tool. And I'm going to open up a new session and try to open from here. So if you open up a file that has the CHLS extension, which are Charles extensions, the first time it'll ask you if you want to convert to .har. After that first time, it didn't ask me anymore. It just automatically converts. And I'm going to try to export again to see if we can get these. So export as Proxyman log. New export. And I'm going to drag this here. Oh. Well, here's our HAR export from before. We'll look at that. So we'll see that here, there's no edited column, or I think you would see comments, but no colors or the edited field, but you still get all of the calls and responses. So it's still pretty useful. And anything that you do open, if it works successfully, will be in this pin section on the left, and then you would still see your calls down here. Yes, those are all the tools that I use for sharing mostly. And those are all the tools that I had to share with you tonight. So thank you for listening in and letting me share what I've learned about Proxyman with you all. If anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Yay, we're clapping here. Thanks, Lily. That's great. One question I'll start just to kick us off is, what are some of the big differences or big benefits you see from versus Charles?
Yes, I think if you've used Charles before, I really like the user interface of Proxyman a lot more. Charles Proxy seems very old and it's not native, so it's a little trickier, also a little trickier to get set up. I think it's a smoother process on Proxyman. I know when I used Charles Proxy, it always took me a couple tries with the certificate. For tools wise, I never got too ramped up with Charles Proxy. I mean, yes, Charles Proxy. So might not have looked into it enough, but I do like how with MapLocal, for example, the MapLocal editor pops up with populated, so you can edit it right there rather than uploading a file to link it to, which you can also do on Proxyman. Yeah, I would say my main two are the editors and the user interface.
Very cool. You mentioned cost, and the Proxyman free version does have some capabilities, or I guess all capabilities, but just some limitations. What is the cost and what's the comparison to Charles Proxy, if you happen to know?
I don't know. I had both of them through my company. So at work, we had a license for Charles Proxy, and then I just recently got the license for Proxyman. So they do it on their website, have different kind of levels that you can do, and you can get it for a group or by seat. And yeah, I was using the free version for a while, up until just about a month ago. So you can still do a lot. It's just the main burden for me was only having 2 roles at a time.
Yeah. But that seems like a good way to get started. Like it lets people try it out. And any features that are not available until the paid version, or is it just some limitations?
I should check on that. So none that I use. All the tools that I use were already ready. I'm pretty sure that all the tools are available. It's just the limitations. And I did pull it up here. So the standard license is $69. A personal license is $79, and then a team license is $59. Yeah. So
Annually, monthly.
yeah. I believe this would be monthly. Let's see. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, any other questions from people in the room or on Zoom?
Yeah, I had just a thought question. So I'm in security. We have our own set of proxies tools. I've heard of Charles Proxy. 1 second. I heard of Charles Proxy. I actually heard a little bit about Proxy, man. But you ever heard in the security tool proxies or played around with those? Or it just feels like sometimes there's two different worlds. You have like the devs world, you have security world, you have these tools, you guys have these tools. But
Yeah. I've only used Proxyman and Charles Proxy, and those are actually the only tools that I was familiar with. Definitely want to look into other tools maybe that are more common for like the security field, just see how they compare.
Great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. Thank you, Lily, for the talk. Was super cool. And I would like to ask you, if there is any way that you can add like a token if you are using an API that needs authentication?
Yes. So do you mean like an authentication token that might be in the header?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Let me see if I can.
Or if there is any way that you can log in through the application, so you don't need to add the token all the time. That the application can do the authentication for you and get a token every time that is expiring.
Yeah. So the calls that I'm familiar with, the token will be populated from the app, so it'll already be in there. If you did need to manually add it, that could probably be you could use like the wildcarder, so that any call would, for example, with the scripting tool, you can add a header, like a header value. So you could do it for any call, add this token. That could be a way to, and I can.
I mean, and I would assume that, since, most of the time we talk to API, you're talking about HTTP, hypertext markup. I mean, on the back end, you're just sending text files to servers. So there's a cookie, usually there's something in the header, you just resend that same thing and it succeeds. Because all the proxy is doing is just capturing the request and you're manipulating into the server to perform some type of test.
Right. So that would probably already be done on the server or in your application, whatever it may be, and you would just see it here.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, thank you everyone so much, and I'll turn it back to Luke.
Thanks.
Hey.
Yay!
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't clap.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again so much for presenting. Hopefully you can present again sometime, and we will see everybody else at the next meetup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Quentin, for joining. Thanks, Darren, Joaquin. Thanks for being in here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah.
Sure. Bye.
Bye, everybody.